Positive Spin, presenting positive, innovative, and solution-oriented news from around the world. On today's program, we experience political demonstrations by activists who are mobilizing to close the Guantanamo Bay prison. And we'll hear a new protest song by Stephen Fisk calling for the closing of Guantanamo. Then we'll see a documentary on the environmental devastation caused by the tar sands in Canada and its impact on the native peoples who live there.
Close Guantanamo is the rallying cry for ending the scourge of torture that blackens the very soul of America and tramples on our country's founding principles. Guantanamo is in violation of numerous U.S. and international laws. In addition, data and the experience of intelligence staff, generals, and psychologists have said that torture does not work for intelligence gathering. 53 of the prisoners were cleared to be released over a year ago, but they're still there. This is illegal and immoral. We can't, or at least shouldn't, afford Guantanamo $2.7 million per year per prisoner. This is way more expensive than the $48,000 for maximum security prison. But now, many groups are working to return our nation to our moral compass. On May 23rd, people came out in 30 cities in 4 countries decrying torture, including Veterans for Peace, Witness Against Torture, and CloseGitmo.net. They will continue to cry out during Torture Awareness Month, with June 26 designated as the International Day in support of torture victims. And the struggle will go on after that throughout the year.
Remind our president of his great promises, who promised change from the years of the Bush administration, who promised on his second day in office, came out and signed an executive order assuring us of the change that we needed, that Guantanamo would be closed within the year. 4 years later, Guantanamo is still open. So we have put on the fence 166 ribbons to denote 166 Muslim men who remain in prison to this day at Guantanamo. The Obama administration itself admits that more than half of the prisoners currently at Guantanamo have been cleared for release for years, and yet they remain behind bars.
In the next segment, we see a music video featuring singer-songwriter Stephen Fisk and friends singing lyrics calling for the closing of Guantanamo. Over the music for the song Guantanamero.
Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera. On this beautiful island, where the shore meets the shimmering sea, there is a nightmare upon us, a deep plague on our humanity, a house of torture, of cruelty and pain, which every day brings the USA shame. We've got to close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo. Close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo.
Detainees held without charges in a legal black hole to plead for their flight, locked in indefinite detention in violation of all human rights,
In violation of international law, in violation of all conventions of war. We've got to close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo. Close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo. $2.7 million per detainee, $454 million cost annually. Taxpayers built for the spending, to see the war machine run without ending. Only making our longest war longer, only inciting the hate to get stronger. We've got to close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo. Close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo. Close Guantanamo. We've got to close Guantanamo.
In the following segment, we take you to ground zero of tar sands destruction in the traditional territory of Beaver Lake Creek Nation, where 84% of the land has been leased out to big oil without the Canadian government following due process in their duty to consult the community. This reckless disregard for the inherent treaty rights and the place 900 band members call home is what moved a former chief to mount an unprecedented constitutional challenge against the Albertan and Canadian government on behalf of the entire nation. This will be the most powerful ecological precedent ever set in a Canadian court. A win will protect the future for all of us by severely limiting the scope and scale of the tar sands industries, one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gases and global warming.
Each and every year, we become more, not less, addicted to oil, a 19th century fossil fuel that is dirty, dwindling, and dangerously expensive.
Most Americans don't know is that for the last 7 years, Canada has been the #1 supplier of oil to the United States. We've replaced Saudi Arabia. We are the new Saudi Arabia.
The nice thing about Canada is that it is a direct pipeline to the U.S. It's reliable fuel, it's from a stable source, and it's not going to be affected by weather issues like hurricanes. So it's a significant factor, and I expect one that will continue to grow in the future.
Digging the bitumen out of the ground, squeezing the oil and converting it into synthetic crude is a monumental challenge. It requires vast amounts of capital, Brobdingnagian technology, and an array of skilled workers. In short, it is an enterprise of epic proportions, akin to building the pyramids or China's Great Wall, only bigger.
The tar sands are the largest industrial development and the largest energy project on the face of the planet. The land that we're talking about being disturbed is an area 149,000 square kilometers, an area the size of the state of Florida or the entire country of England.
Tar sands production is going to quadruple over the next 20 years or so. The tar sands are a very interesting example of end-to-end environmental degradation, whether it be excess use of water, whether it be toxic sludge that's out there affecting ecosystems, or whether it be greenhouse gas emissions.
$120 billion has been invested in tar sands development over the last 12 years. The Canadian reserves hold up to 173 billion barrels of recoverable crude oil, second only to Saudi Arabia. Tar sands production uses enough natural gas to heat 3 million homes and spews out as much greenhouse gas in a day as 1.34 million cars.
There's nowhere else on Earth where we're talking about destroying an area the size of Florida. There is nowhere else on Earth where you have toxic ponds that are so big that you can now see them from space.
What we are doing is probably the greatest form of moral carelessness you can find on the planet at the moment. We now have 60 kilometers of toxic lakes all along the Athabasca River. And what we know at this point in time is that we know that every single one of these tailings ponds leaks. They were, after all, only made out of sand.
Alberta's Liberals say tainted water leaked from an oil sands plant into the Athabasca River was kept secret for months. The opposition released a report today saying the leak from Suncor's wastewater pond happened last fall and that residents downstream were not told about it until 2 weeks ago.
I don't know when they were told, and that's one of the things I want to find out for sure is were the people notified, and again, what was the level of toxicity.
Tar sands generate a number of toxic chemicals hazardous to life. More disturbing is that these pollution levels are rising.
Tar sands are not standard oil. They are full of all sorts of very nasty things that we do not want in our world.
When you put arsenic and PAHs together, the carcinogenic effect can increase by 8 to 18-fold. And this is exactly what we have in the water and in the sediments of the river and in the delta. If you continually put billions of liters of tailings into ponds every day, 1.8 billion liters per day, where's it going to go? It eventually, some of it has to leak. The best estimates right now are that for about every 160 liters of tailings that are produced, one leaks and escapes to the ecosystem. That's pretty good from an engineering perspective. 160 liters we put in a pond, only one gets away. The problem is we're dealing with toxic substances on massive, massive volumes, and so that's not a good thing.
And the reality is that this project threatens the world's third largest watershed.
The area is vast, a toxic pond that stretches for several square kilometers, and a landing point on Monday for hundreds of migratory birds. Out of almost 500 that landed on this toxic pond at Syncrude's oil sands site, only a handful have been recovered. And now there seems to be little hope of saving the ducks.
A completely oiled bird would sink nearly immediately.
This all coming as Alberta is on a $25 million PR campaign supporting the oil sands.
You're seeing a string of waterfowl and other birds dying on these tailings ponds all the time. Fish and Wildlife have reported that animals as big as moose drink from these tailings ponds, so you're definitely not keeping the wildlife in those surrounding areas safe.
At 35 million acres, Canada's boreal forest is one of the largest remaining intact forest ecosystems on Earth. Larger than the Brazilian rainforest, the boreal is the nursery for countless migratory birds and endangered species.
I think we have a lot of information about the health impacts on wildlife. Certainly we know there are major impacts on wildlife populations through loss of habitat. Woodland caribou herds in northeastern Alberta have declined by 50% over the past decade as a result of oil sands development. Likewise, seen declines in a whole number of boreal forest birds and other mammal species. So that's obviously a big concern.
Today's government and stakeholders can look back with pride at the approach we all took in managing the oil sands deposit and the consistent and acceptable picture we have created from whatever perspective you look at it. The world is no longer watching us to see if we'll fail. They are now lined up to learn from our success.
The announcement last night is Heather Kennedy, and this lady I know very well from Suncor, is now in the government and in the area of approvals. So what does that say to you?
Well, it's not only unusual, it's completely unacceptable. We have now someone who's a senior official with Suncor, has been made a deputy minister responsible for development around Fort McMurray, and Suncor is still paying her salary. And the conflict of interest here is so thick, you couldn't cut it with a knife.
Because right now, what we have is a government that is basically industry's best friend. And they will not lift a finger that will do anything to harm industry in any way.
Our environmental rules, although they're very good, are rarely enforced. The government gives water away to companies without charging a fee. There are very, very few violations or prosecutions on environmental issues, whether it has to do with air pollution or water pollution.
I've spoken with environmental officers for the Alberta government who have been frustrated to tears because they have filed reports, have caught polluters year in, year out, and nothing ever happens. It gets to a certain point at the political level and they kill the investigation.
It's a big wrong. It is a huge wrong. And there probably is, criminal activity going on to suppress, a report. If it happens and nobody sees it, it's like the tree falling in the forest. Does anybody hear? Does anybody care?
We've got protocols in place. Premier just signed a protocol as late as
The Environment Minister of Alberta, Rob Renner, even recently stated in the legislature that it is not the job of Alberta Environment to act as an advocate for the environment. And that's a stunning statement.
The government has devolved its responsibilities towards monitoring what's happening there to a privately controlled consortium. It's controlled by industry, having private data that I can't get if I want to analyze it, telling the government what is happening there. It's completely out of control.
The big winner in all this is the federal government. The federal government stands to make more than $70 billion from oil sands taxes by 2020. In contrast, the Alberta government will be pulling in something like $40 billion. So Alberta is essentially a petrostate. It behaves like a petrostate. It operates like a petrostate in the sense that it's all about oil and gas production. And just about any other values are being sacrificed.
From all our perspectives, what we should be doing is putting people first and realizing that the price of this absolute unabated development that's going on, not just in the tar sands but all over the world, is perhaps getting to be too big a price to pay.
A lot of the dirty energy economy is not just subsidized by hidden tax benefits, by access to public lands for free. It is subsidy by people's lungs and by their own bodies when the water and air that they depend on become the dumping grounds for private interest. What this really has to do with is big people picking on small people and assuming they can get away with it. It is bullying at the worst level, and it puts people who cannot protect themselves in harm's way. And that is maddening.
All of this destruction is really by popular demand. And I'm part of that demand.
We're at a real crossroads within the United States and within the world on getting the energy economy right. Decisions are being made today that will make that happen or commit us to perpetual decline and more filth, more and more disease, and less choice.
But the Americans, by asking this really important question, well, do we really want to run on dirty oil? And how long do we want to run on dirty oil for? Might actually force us to clean up things.
In 2013, Beaver Lake Cree Nation won the right to go to trial. Now they need help to gather the expert evidence, science, and legal arguments needed to succeed. If you'd like to help with this, please contact raventrust.com. We hope the show has inspired you to take action in your local community to create a better world. I'm Bill McCarthy, and I want to remind you that everyone can make a difference. Go out and make some positive news.
Outcry for people who want a better planet. And there are powers that be that let the people panic. Look at the Gulf of Japan, could they have really planned it? Heading for the iceberg like the Titanic. Atlantic mystery, Atlantis white from history. The truth about the pyramids in ancient Mayan prophecy. Space Odyssey, look into the anomalies and you will find suppression of free energy technology. A false democracy born out of a monopoly. Sacred knowledge robbery like the towers they toppling. No stopping free. J-Brain, Vito C. Coming from the inner me. Free energy. The oil's running dry. Our money's burning out. Solar panels on the roof of the White House. Hey! We bringing on some real change. Water catchment system. We collecting rain.
Time to gather round. The moment's now. How will it all turn out? And from the crowd, be the one who's the man who takes his time for free energy.
Nikola Tesla perceived the earth as a conductor of acoustical resonance, and still his presence lives in the heart of visionary invention. Over 5,000 patents censored. Researching zero-point energy, trying to get through delirium. The unified field theory of Nassim Harriman, and every day we carry in the burden of our past. Water fuel cars, we no longer need the gas. So many solutions right here in your face. Raw earth energy, create what rejuvenates. Green walls and green roofs, grow plants on everything. Magnetic movements, don't need gas for anything. Spacely sprockets, doing our own research, paying out of pocket. Bike-powered stages, you pedal in our rocket. Fully access to techie knowledge. Green power over big profit. You can't stop it.
Ever think what the wars are fought for? Ever dream that the world could be more? I stand my life, our earth, one chance we could do it together. Ever think what the wars are fought for? Ever dream that the world could be more? I stand my life, I vow one day we could do it together. Oh, yeah.
The Renaissance, third industrial revolution. Invention is the language of a worldwide solution. The body electromagnetic, plasma arc reactor, Stubblefield, Kautsky, Frost. Free the knowledge lost. Some people wait for 2012 to watch the earth shift, but in New Mexico they out there building earth ships. We got the language wrong, I got a new twist. The lifting of the veil, that's the true apocalypse. Some see free energy as the enemy, but my genetic memory remembering that could never be. Thoughts float in the anti-gravity. A cubic foot of space can fuel the whole world annually. You can choose a love or hate. We vote or maybe meditating. Every day we demonstrate so we can finally get it straight. Peace worldwide is the anthem that we celebrate. Free energy like the end of the movie Saint.
Time to gather round, the moment's now.